Had the rules of the game meant to stay alive, Vorf would have been winning. Unfortunately, striking back was proving to be difficult. Aggression was not his nature. Neither was heading toward the guy pelting him with lethal clouds of dirt. Malkia, from what he could tell, had let the guy calm down when he turned on Vorf, but unfortunately that just improved its tactics. For one, when he noticed his companion had gotten the cart working, he only hesitated for a moment before building a wall of magic to halt Vorf's progress. They were both now trapped, more or less, away from the cart. This guy is dedicated. He was also shaking, and sweat drops were forming on his brow. This was this man's last contribution to whatever cause he supported, and he knew it. He was going to lose to the pair, and if not, then to whoever followed them, and he knew it. It meant everything to him, so long as he bought some time for the Electromancer and the Magicless. Vorf almost felt bad for him. Malkia, can you handle him alone? When she nodded, he breathed dragon fire to create a hole in the wall just big enough to fly through. Frantic, the Geomancer tried to close it, but he was too slow. A tested Geomancer might have stopped me, Vorf thought. So what rebel group would send this guy? His wings felt the strain as he sped up to catch up with the cart. Flight was a difficult spell to maintain. By the unnamed god, Master Arven's mouth when Vorf managed several minute-long flight untested could have fit an entire beehive. Still, if he could outpace the cart, then he could melt the tracks and stop them then and there. The Electromancer seemed to have been untested as well, so he felt he stood a chance. He only kicked himself for not going for the tracks earlier. Malkia had heard stories of psychomancers who could turn a raging battler into a man so apathetic that suicide seemed the only possible route within minutes. She had heard tales of psychomancers who could so completely change someone's thoughts that they switched sides in the middle of a fight without even questioning why. Malkia also knew that most psychomancers were better suited to fighting in groups, as those who weren't among the legendary were relatively lacking in spells that caused direct damage, and she, similar to most mancers, had never bothered to learn how to fight in hand-to-hand combat. The Geomancer had a weak will, and it was relatively easy to distract him, make him see things that weren't there, make him do things without thinking about it. What she couldn't do was get close to him, or find another way to hurt him. She did theoretically know a spell that would mess with his mind's ability to process pain and make the act of spellcasting unbearable, or paralyze him with fear, but it would take concentration away from her other powers and let him think properly enough to get a clear shot in. And she had never actually done such things before. As the fight continued, she found herself deeply regretting the years she spent ignoring emotional manipulation in favor of finding things and messing with memories for fun. Memories. So long as one allowed the magic to wear off, there was nothing wrong with making someone forget something crucial at a strategic moment, or making them remember something that never happened to affect their mood. With her obsession with proving that she could get what she wanted without magic, Malkia had always just seen this as a source of amusement. But still, she could do it. With her testing, and that renowned Malkia confidence, she did it with a little bit more ambition than was necessary. Thanks to her, he temporarily forgot he was a Geomancer. Not doubting for a second that she had gone for something too far, she raised the confused man staring at his filthy hands and, in an act that disgusted her almost as much as the dirt from the crumbling wall, Malkia slammed him into the nearest Electromancer construct and took advantage of his dazed state to go with the energy-draining task of magicking him into unconsciousness. Seeing the Dracomancer come up on him, Lizzet tried to speed up the cart. Unfortunately, his body chose that exact moment to make the spasms work, and he felt as if his entire torso were burning with lightning. In his pain, he did not notice the Dracomancer burst forward and breathe on the tracks below, melting with that infuriating blue dragon fire. The cart moved forward, as usual, right into the substance, and Lizzet was completely unprepared for the lurch as said cart broke through its tracks and veered to the side, slamming both him and the Magicless against the walls. Vorf watched with satisfaction as the cart tumbled off the tracks, only to remember that the Magicless was still on there, and quite possibly hurt by his actions. Allowing his wings to dissolve, and briefly enjoying the second of bliss as the energy drain stopped, Worf walked up to the construct carefully. "What did you do?" Melky's voice suddenly came up from behind him. "Melted the Drex. I thought it would force them to stop, but the electromancer kept going until it was too late. Come on, let's check this out." Melchior seemed oddly worried as they moved toward the machine, but that expression slowly vanished as they got closer. "I can sense the magicless girl's mind. She's still alive. So is some mind I haven't felt enough to recognize, though I think it's safe to assume the electromancer's with her." Worf nodded, thinking over what few spells he still had the energy for. The electromancer pulled himself out of the wreckage, clearly exhausted and struggling to stand. He tried to reach down for something, but fell over. "This should be easy," Worf noted. Melchior somehow looked both relieved and disappointed. Looking into what was once the doorway of the now dented mass of metal, they saw the electromancer dazed and the magicless girl unconscious. "But please, let us go. We need her. The future of Mansa depends on it." His struggling gasps made Worf feel sick. "Did I do this to a sentient being? Of course I did. He's a criminal. Don't forget that." Melchior did not seem to suffer the same moral conflict. "This is so pathetic that I might actually find your justification amusing. Go on." "I don't have the full details. She's a biomancer experiment. They did something to her to fix a mistake. A mistake that could kill us all." Melchior suspected Worf wasn't buying any of this. Most of her said she shouldn't either, but a part of her couldn't shut down the memories of how protective the High Chief was of this girl, how secretive, how uncomfortable, how desperate to get a magicless servant back. Track Mars tortures with this. She held out her hand, the eye opening to its full width, and attempted to read his mind. True mind reading was practically impossible, or parents would have been out of work, but one could figure out concealed emotions, hidden intents, sometimes even motivations, which was how she knew that he believed he was telling the truth. "What did you just do?" "Try to read his intentions. Worf, he's telling the truth, or at least he thinks he is." The Dracomancer frowned. "If what they're saying is true, why should we let you take her to her rather than give her back to the Biomancers? They seem better equipped to fix this mistake than you people. Look around. You were defeated by 2 newly tested Mancers." "The Biomancers, they want to keep her hostage, to experiment on her, and for something that would actually mean something to you people. They plan to get her to get power. The mistake might kill the others if fixed." There was a bit of venom in that last bit. Melchior didn't understand why, but Worf's face was slightly contorted. It was as if he were genuinely hurt by that remark. "I'm going to be completely honest. That does sound as if it would be something the Biomancers would do." The Electromancer seemed to be too glad about this. "You've seen the corruption of Mancer society? You've noticed the evil." Worf bristled. "I've noticed flaws. I wouldn't go so far as to call it evil." "Of course there are flaws," Malky interjected. "Everyone has them. You wouldn't be able to defeat them otherwise." "But why should you have to defeat them?" "That's the nature of the world. Someone has to be on top. Secta's the same way." So you think Mansa is the same as Secta?" Now it was Melchior's turn to bristle. "Don't compare us to those savages." "That was you," Worf noted, much to the Electromancer's apparent delight. Velphia knew that this would get her arrested. She knew that her contact with the Biomancer High Chief would lead to great things in the future. If the Biomancers did use this girl to take over, then said contact might be even better. But using said contact would be traitorous. And although she wasn't particularly fond of many individuals in Psycho, she wouldn't let anyone say she wasn't loyal to her home nation. If she prevented the Biomancer from taking over, then she would be a hero in 11 nations. and that could get her much further than a contact. That last one was a big if. Even if the Electromancer was telling the truth, the idea of keeping this girl against the Biomancers and taking her to who knows where, the idea was just ridiculous. On the other hand, the two had just insulted her, and she really didn't have a proper response. She looked once more at the unconscious Magicless and thought back on how the High Chief thought of her. Then she thought back to Master Sven and what he would think. Malkia suspected he would be furious at her for even considering this, and that thought was probably right. But she also thought back to something he once said, something that was very formative for her character. Be a little risky. Don't hesitate to smile when they have their weapons drawn. Only submit when you have a plan later. Oftentimes, the best way to get someone to ruin you is to do everything they say you have to do to stop them. She didn't fully understand how it happened, but her mind slowly sided with the criminal. Vorf looked down at the girl. She was unconscious, but she could see marks running along her clothesline. They resembled wounds, and looked too old to have been done by these two. While one never really heard anything definitive, the rumors were consistent enough that it would be certain that Bio was not the best place to be a Magicless. Honestly, where was it a good place to be a Magicless? He didn't know what started this line of thought, but it had been bothering him for quite some time now, even before the testing. Ignoring the Electromancer's claims, could he really bring this girl back to them? Looking at his claims, could he really say they were that far-fetched, especially if even half of the rumors about Bio were true? Mancers got involved in plots to gain power over each other all the time. The rules of birth and forming powers made it impossible for them to conquer each other the way Sectans often did. But influence? If no one craved that, there would have been a lot more Hydromancers at the previous festivals, and it would always be held in Electro. Some way, somehow, this man had convinced him.